Welcome back to the Wolverine podcast. I'm John Borton. I'm here with, of course, the one and only Tom Crawford. You can hear him on Sunday nights on Press Pass with Jack Ebling and a variety of characters. He is the founder of the Crawford Podcasting Network. You can see him on all kinds of videos. And Tom Crawford was certainly among the many down in Indianapolis, as was I, for the Big Ten Championship. And Tom, they got the job done in a kind of a familiar fashion.
Yeah. A second half magic pixie dust to get this thing. I'll tell you what, I am busting, man. I am busting. I got home. I drove in my driveway in East Lansing, 5:35 a.m. So let's make that Sunday morning. But fired up the Big Ten Network when I walked into the house. So I mean, I was still humming. I didn't even go to bed for a little bit, but no, it was great. In all fairness, I did my cake and eat it. I did the media presser with you and seeing all the boys from the Wolverine.com and had dinner with you and Pat Hayes and went over all that stuff. I did the post game press, but in the middle, I went fan. I sat in section 139 down there behind the Michigan bench, 13 rows up, and just loving every minute of it.
Wow.
That second half was awesome. A little nerve-wracking, as actually we talked about that. Remember when we had that conversation between you and Trevor and Trevor Woods and Baus, and we said, it's going to be, say at halftime it's going to be tight, and it was tight. 1 point.
Yeah, I was saying all week, people would ask, how do you think it's going to go? I said, I think it's going to go like it's been going for the last 10 weeks. There's this cliffhanger at halftime, and then you shove the opponent over the cliff. Because Michigan, what does it do? It learns what is being done to it in the first half. It attacks in the ways that it needs to, and the conditioning. I mean,
oh, Ben Herbert.
Jim Harbaugh has talked about Ben Herbert and all that he's brought. Well, I tell you what, old boy's due for a raise about now because that this team has delivered constantly in the second halves, and I think they're led by a kid that just doesn't get shook. You look at Jay McCarthy in operation, and I have been told that the JJ McCarthy that we see out in front of the media, the kind of bouncing in swagger, says, "Hey, how's everybody doing?" And then on the way out, "Hey, you guys have a great day."
Yeah, you guys have a great day, man. Yeah. Every one of you.
And I hear that he's the same way in a tight game in the huddle. Hey, I mean, he's communicating what he has to, but he's loose.
Listen, I'm a people watcher, and when I had the privilege of sitting behind the Michigan bench so close, 13 rows up. So I'm looking at everything on that bench, the whole dynamics, a lot of the players, like Caleb Colzar getting everybody jacked up, getting the crowd, because I thought the Michigan crowd was kind of nervous. And it's almost like the walk-ons and the injured guys were trying to get the crowd going. It was really weird because, I think Michigan fans were like, oh, this is not the way it's supposed to be going. They're getting too many yards. But I did notice one thing. You remember the pick that JJ threw? I don't know, late third quarter, whatever, on that scramble at him, and he got a little greedy, if you will, and so he comes off the field, and Jim Harbaugh greets him, and he's pulling off his band, looking at the plays, they're going over the plays, and he's looking so unflappable and businesslike. He's not pounding his helmet, a little like Tom Brady was doing last night in that first half. He was looking at Tom Brady of all people showing that frustration moment. Tom Brady can learn from J.J. McCarthy, man. You got to stay cool. And, he came over there. He's looking at it, and then he's pumping everybody up. And I was like, this kid is amazing. He's a sophomore. Mm-hmm. And I that jumped at me last year, and it's really jumping out at me this year. And I do remember, I think did you stay down in Indy on Sunday?
Yeah, well, I left very early.
Okay. So anyway, okay, so when they had the selection show, whatever, and so they had the ESPN guys, Kirk Herbstreit interviewed Jim Harbaugh, and Jim goes, Kirk, I was as a quarterback, you're a quarterback. I had these nervous moments. he never gets nervous, says Jim Harbaugh about
Mhm.
JJ McCarthy. And I look, I see it. I study that stuff. His on the side. He's right. This kid is he's a freak when it comes to poise.
The only thing wrong on that interception is he had way too much time to throw.
Yeah,
he
he
had
did.
he could have come up in the stands and sat by you for
Oh,
a while, came
I
back
know.
and made the throw.
He has
Uh,
10 pitch back there. It was amazing. I mean, yes,
yes,
the O-line did a great job, and his scramble ability really creates a lot of opportunity.
and he gets a lot out of not a lot of completions at times. 12 completions down at Ohio State, and yet
Yes.
he's threw for 263 yards.
Yep.
Here he throws for 3 touchdowns out of
Yeah.
11 completions.
Yeah. No
I
kidding.
mean, he does what he's been asked to do.
Yeah.
And Jim Harbaugh made a really good point. He said JJ McCarthy could be that kind of guy that is, hey, I'm JJ McCarthy. I should be throwing the ball 30, 35 times a game. I this or that. And you see him and he couldn't be happier. He says, we have this smash fest and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. He's into it. He just wants to win.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a tough dude. And all those 11 completions were all crucial completions. And I thought the touchdown pass to Ronnie Bell, I think that was early in the fourth quarter. That was a
Mhm.
crucial pass to extend that lead. I mean, that was a great throw. I mean, he a couple of the scrambles that we talked about. I mean, he's making every completion count. And I think, when we get into his junior year, you're going to see the 250 to 325 yardage outputs from JJ McCarthy. I think that's coming down the line. It's just the reliance on the running game right now, and Donovan Edwards making big plays, and then the defense. The defense was in the red zone. My word, they were terrific. I mean, all Purdue was doing was kicking field goals in that second half, and yet between the 20s, it was a little dicey, and that's where all the anxiety I think came in the fan base on the Michigan side.
Sure, but Michigan's defense has stepped up in a huge way, not only in the Big Ten championship game, but the week earlier in Columbus. Once opponents get around the red zone, it's they're shutting them down. They're keeping them out of the end zone, and that's a lot of old time Michigan coaches would like that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
bend but not break, and you can, you just you stonewall them. So it was the second straight Big Ten championship. The confetti comes down from the roof,
yeah,
all of that, and you start to think this. They keep certifying one by one. They certainly certified a week ago. You win in Columbus. You've won 2 in a row over Ohio State, and you've done it in their home. That is that. Boom! You stamp certified on that, and then 2 of these in a row. I mean, they're before this for the more than a decade and a half. Michigan fans are thinking, is this team ever going to win the Big Ten again? And now, boom, you're, and it's not just that they won it; they won it in convincing fashion in a way that gives you the impression that they could turn right back around next year and do it all over again.
yeah. Not to get ahead of ourselves this year, but great question and topic, John. I thought last year was jubilation, and this year is validation. I mean, last year there was a more relaxing second half in that Iowa game. We were down there for that, and but I think that this year it was like let's have Michigan prove that was not an aberration. That was just a one and done thing, and they obviously did that, winning down in Columbus back to back. But to go and end up winning, by convince 3 touchdowns against Purdue and a Purdue team that is scary, has scary elements that they competed with everybody. They've lost to some teams, and Aiden O'Connell is a terrific quarterback, and what a tear jerking story he had to endure losing his brother, and that dude's got moxie. I'll tell
Mm.
you that. And a good running game, and so I thought Purdue held themselves well. I'd like to see them beat LSU in the bowl game, and I think they could do that. But yeah, it was different. We had to go back to 03 and 04 for back-to-back Big Ten championships. Keep in mind those were shares.
Yep.
That was before this championship game format. And then before that, I think you got to go back into the 70s if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I mean I'm trying to think of
For
71.
back to back.
Yeah, for back to back.
You had the five in a row. Let's
No,
Doug,
but I'm
Doug
talking about not. I mean, where you had exclusivity, complete exclusivity on those
uh
shares
well, I believe
and those
91
championships.
92 were
Okay,
outright.
okay, for outright, those are both outrights. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's 30 years. That's
Yes,
three
sir.
decades. That's a long time. Going and then once you get further back on that, you got to go back way back. So to win, yeah, and then the other thing is, John, the 13-0 just blows my mind. I
Uh,
mean, to win 13 games, and we've heard this over and over from local media and the national media. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your schedule is. That's hard to do. And when you've only lost two of those games, only two of those wins of those 13 have been in single digits, which is the antithesis of what TCU has gone through on their slate, which makes Michigan a heavy favorite in this game, a relatively heavy favorite. I mean, that's impressive as well. So I love this team, man. I'm just crazy about this team. It's so much fun.
it's amazing, and the only you talk about a tearjerker. This is on another level for O'Connell, and as you said, our thoughts go out to him
Oh
and
yeah,
his family, and he is really good. The A much lesser sort of hurt, but still a hurt nonetheless, is to know that Blake Corum didn't get to participate in all of this as he would have liked, and but still, this team just seems to shrug it off and keep going. It's got some depth. What a showcase time for Donovan Edwards to be able to step forward and do what he's doing. He is certainly going to be your number one guy next year, unless Blake Corum decides to come back.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And
And what
who
if
knows?
Donovan's up on that stage? He gets the MVP of the Big Ten championship. What does he do? He talks about Blake Corum the
Yeah,
whole time. I
that's
mean,
very
that's what.
cool.
This is why this team is the way they are. This is a culture thing. This was not the way this program was. When you and I have talked about this a couple of years, as soon as as recent as a couple of years ago, the culture was way different than it is right now. I'm not saying it's perfect, but no, when you got 100, 110, 100, however many guys you got, and you got all the other, you got coaches and you got, quality control guys, and you get this big mass of 150 people, whatever the heck it is, to have everything go smoothly and everybody, in a seamless culture that's tough to do, but it seemingly has worked. And I just think this team likes each other. Jim Harbaugh likes his team. He's loose. He's having a great time, and there's two more opportunities to make this season truly magical, one at a time. Obviously, the first challenge at the Fiesta Bowl against TCU.
Yeah, and that's what we want to talk about next. You mentioned Michigan culture. We're going to talk about a couple of little bumps in the road later in this podcast, but right ahead, dead ahead, TCU on New Year's Eve. Your thoughts about that matchup? I don't. I mean, I can't see Michigan as a heavy favorite. I just think that if you get this far, you're good enough to give anybody a game. And I you see that quarterback operate. We talked about O'Connell in a passing sense. Uh, TCU quarterback is just tough as nails, and certainly earned Jim Harbaugh's respect in how he went about things in his last game, despite the fact that TCU did not win.
Yeah, Max Duggan's. I mean, he's got blood dripping down his forearms. I mean, my God, that guy, that guy looked like a junkyard dog. I'm watching that game over at the JW Marriott, not the Marriott that Michigan was staying, but the JW Marriott. Great area to watch. Man, pouring with Michigan fans, and all these Michigan fans are rooting for TCU. I mean, and let's be real. I mean, I was too. I mean, I want if Michigan plays Ohio State, have it in the title game, on January 9th out in LA. Okay, that's fine. That's all well and good. They survived Georgia, so be it. I don't care which one of those two teams win. But TCU and Michigan, I think, is a great opportunity for Michigan. I think it's doable. I think Michigan can run the football against TCU. I really do. Much more productively than they did against Purdue. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, looking at I'm going back on their of their game. And I watched TCU. I watched a lot of college football. I watched that. I think it was that Oklahoma State game. They were very fortunate to win that. We know about the Baylor game. They had a walk-off win on that. I mean, they have not really. I mean, they've skanked by a lot of teams by a small amount of points, but that's a mark of a good team. But
No
when you
doubt.
look at the metrics on that, John, compared to what Michigan has done, as I mentioned before, double digits and some pretty landslide wins. And look at that Penn State game. I mean, TCU doesn't have a insurmountable Penn State margin of victory like we did, like Michigan did. Not we, Michigan did, and also like Ohio State did. Like I was with I was with my friends this weekend.
There
Okay,
you
I didn't
go.
believe
You're
that. I'm
still in the
excited.
stands.
Flipped out. I'm human, man, and I'm euphoric. Okay, and then the Ohio State game. Okay, so I mean, TCU didn't have that kind of win either. Their strength
Sure.
of schedule. Their strength of schedule was solid. I think it's the toughest of the four survivors in the CFP. But I'm telling you what, I like the matchup. I'll just say that. I
Oh,
like
I
the
do. I do as well. And Michigan currently at minus 7.5 on the line. That's healthy respect for a Michigan team. That's
it is.
more than a touchdown. Pretty decent line. I will say this: um, a lot of talk came out when the ordering came about. Some were arguing, no way can TCU stay in the 3 spot if they lose the game, and they lost the game. So everybody was saying, oh no, they're going to slip Ohio State in there, or some said Ohio State didn't belong in the top 4 to begin with. But others were saying, hey, they're going to jump them. They're going to match Michigan and Ohio State in that semifinal. As it turns out, we get Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State. If Ohio State was going to make it, I think that's the ordering that I felt was the most right and that I wanted to see. How about you?
Well, TCU, is going out there and putting it on the line in an extra game. Ohio State's flopping on their couch, having Utah Utes take care of business for them, and then chilling on Saturday as well, watching TCU, lose a tight one. So I don't have any sympathy about Ohio State being number 4. The matter, and people say, well, Georgia's got they're the number 1 seed versus over what Michigan has in their opponent. Well, 1 and 2 is not that far apart anyway, from my understanding. I mean, when you really look at the body of work,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a huge disparity between Georgia and Michigan in the bottom. I mean, look at this. I mean, they're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That's Sanford Stadium in Athens West. Okay, they're going to have that place. How many games has Georgia played in Atlanta in the last few years? My word. That's a de facto home game. Trust me, there'll be a ton of Ohio State fans. They will buy their way in, and they will show up strong. But I mean, Ohio's for Georgia. This is a home game. Let's be real. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who are saying, "Oh, they got screwed." That they'd rather play. Maybe they would rather play TCU, but they're getting literally a home game. So they should just quit whining.
Yeah, I think Ohio State will be decently represented. I'm not
Oh,
sure
they
that they
will.
will. Yeah, but I'm not sure that they will come out in as overwhelming a numbers as it would have been had they not had that last game they did.
You think? You think
There were
it's
a
a little?
lot of people that looked
Yeah.
down and were a little disillusioned, like this can't be happening for the second
Okay.
year in a row. I
Okay.
mean, that's
That's a
you
good
know,
point.
there might be some that decide, I'm not going to watch these guys' tails get kicked for a second straight game, and
Yeah, that's
they
true.
it doesn't take much to for the Ohio State fan who has been very spoiled over the last couple of decades to suddenly turn on things and
And it'll be difficult when we get the aerial shot, even though it's indoors. I mean,
yeah,
red on red,
red on
you
red.
can't really tell. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it'll be a noise thing evaluation when teams score or make stops in that game that we'll get a gauge on.
Yeah, yep. Well, I'll tell you what, the Michigan will be out in Arizona enjoying that state and getting ready for TCU. They will have come a long way since the last time in Arizona. I believe it was the Buffalo Wild Wings
Oh,
Bowl,
oh
and
yeah. Oh,
and
poke my eyes out. That was a
yeah,
bad. That was a bad time. That was a
no,
bad time in Michigan football lore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
Kansas
not
State,
good.
right? Kansas State
Yeah,
over
yeah,
Brady Hoke's team.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
not
not
good.
good,
But
not good.
I like the matchup for Michigan. I think that JJ McCarthy will be able to do a lot of things in that game. Michigan's offensive line alone will exert its will one more time. I harken back to that Ohio State and slowing it down and looking back on that game and seeing what the interior of Michigan's offensive line did as that game against the Buckeyes got later and later, and they really started to crumple some people. I think that they will be able to do the same thing against TCU and once again have a really big second half. I just don't. I don't see them pulling away in the first half. It
Mhm.
doesn't seem to be what they do. They are like that boxer punching and feeling out and jabbing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
moving, and then you start to really assert yourself in the second half.
Yeah, yeah, and Blake Corum is I can tell Blake Corum is a boxing fan because he's made that reference about punching and punching a few of the post pressers, and then we'll wear him down. And Jesse Minter must be he must be a mad scientist in that in that locker room at halftime. Because there's been some incredible adjustments when you look back. How many single digits shutouts or 3 points here and there? This was 9 points. I think the Illinois game was the only time that they gave up touchdowns in the second half in the back half of this season. I mean, the Illinois game was kind of an aberration in that regard. So Michigan, and then the Ben Herbert thing, we referenced that early in the podcast, and if there's an award for strength and conditioning coach of the year, I mean, he's got to be up there with that because there's a lot of lasting power in this team, and then I think some offensive adjustments as well. I thought Michigan got the running game going more effectively in the second half. You saw on that first series. I mean, the first play, Donovan Edwards bust out on the left side, going down the sidelines in front of the Purdue sidelines, and got that thing going, stoked out real quick, and you felt that Michigan was going to take command in the second half, and they did.
Yes, sir. And your reference to Jesse Minter as mad scientist, I think he's the mad scientist that Jim Harbaugh really needs to keep in the local
Yeah.
lab next year. I think that is going to be just vital. You look, Ohio State and Penn State combined for 6 second half points. Purdue and Ohio State combined for what was it? 6 second half points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
So,
much. It's just field goals. I mean, there's no touchdowns.
I mean, they are keeping teams out of the end zone. I think they can do it against TCU. This TCU has some explosiveness, and they will. I mean, you couldn't help but watch that last game if you're Jesse Minter and really start dialing some things up in terms of okay, how do we contain Duggan?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I got to wait and see if Mike Morris is back for that game because I
That's
know
huge.
he's been itching to go and
Yeah.
just hadn't been able to.
That's huge. And they got a Big 12 receiver, and they do a lot of 50-50 balls. If there's one, and I don't like, I thought Michigan's secondary had some, let's call it weak moments in this game. And I think they've been stellar pretty much the entire year, and what Steve Clinksdale's done with that. That's that position group has been amazing. Okay, but if there's one weakness or one just observation that Michigan seems vulnerable to, it's the 50-50 ball. I mean, they can have great coverage, but they don't. There's a lot of 50-50 ball. I mean, the 50-50 balls typically are being won by the offense and this goes back to the Michigan State game. Remember the first half of the Michigan State game this year, the 50-50 ball. I mean, that's how Michigan State got by in their aerial game all season long, was just throwing up a 50-50 ball.
Yep.
And to Coleman or somebody like that. I mean, that's how they did it. And I thought Purdue, of course, Charlie Jones was he was Wes Welker out there on steroids. I mean, he was amazing. But I mean, I think that could be a problem in this game, and so they're going to have. I mean, Will Johnson's going to have to his amazing year is going to have to get super amazing, and Sandersdale and the rest of the bunch back in that, that back four are going to have to get it done, because I think that's going to be the big test. Because I don't think that they're well, and this is an offensive team, TCU, and
No
TCU
doubt.
is going to score point defensively. It's not a defensive team. I think they're like 56 in yielding of scoring, so it's not a good metric for them defensively, but it's a heck of a metric for them offensively.
Hmm. So, in other words, you need to do exactly what you have done 2 years in a row against Ohio State. Take a
Yes,
great offensive team and
yes,
hold them in the 20s,
yes,
and then
exactly,
roll. And
exactly.
as far as 50-50 balls, I agree with you. Um, but I'll tell you what, there was a 75-25 ball that it looked for all the world like Cade Stover was going to hang on to in
Oh,
the end zone,
yeah,
and Mikey Sainer still comes up
yeah,
and flicks it
no,
away. I'll tell
absolutely.
you what, that's one of the plays of the year for Michigan. They will
Absolutely.
need that sort of effort against TCU.
Well, when I look at teams that have won the national championship, and I hate to exemplify Ohio State, but I'll go back to their 2002. I think it was 2002. They win the national championship, and you always have these certain plays. The Michael Jenkins touchdown, holy Buckeye, You have certain plays, and you have certain games that get them over the hump. Okay, for Ohio State, in 2002, it was the Purdue game on the road. For this Michigan team, it was the Illinois game. It
No
was the
doubt.
Illinois game that had a lot of little nightmare to it all the way through. It was a root canal for fans and players. Blake Corum went down. He lost not only the rest of he lost the Heisman Trophy against Illinois. Let's be real. It cost this Heisman Trophy had his name written all over it the way things played out. If he
No,
had
no
stayed
doubt.
healthy, would have played out rather. And
Right.
so, but that's the game we're going to be looking back, that Illinois game, and maybe a little bit of the Maryland game. But that I thought Michigan had, even though that was a one touchdown game, they had pretty much control. And those are the only two single digit victories that Michigan had. But I mean, and so that yeah, but the play that you're talking about, the same still poke out in the end zone, Stover, wow. Because that changed the whole complexion of that game. And what, one play later, 2 plays later, Donovan goes 75 yards,
Yes, sir.
game over.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
huge.
Excellent. Well, all right. So let us just assume for a moment, and we hate to make assumptions, but let us just assume, for the sake of argument, that Michigan takes down TCU, finds itself in the national championship game at SoFi Stadium, and the question becomes, who do you want to see? You've got a couple of scintillating possibilities for rematch. Either it's the Georgia team that took Michigan down hard last year in the playoff, or you got the Buckeyes again. And I'm going to hold off. I just want to. I've got a strong opinion on this, but
Oh,
I'd like to hear
you're
yours
gonna,
first.
you're okay. So I go, okay, you go first. Okay. I'll go first. Okay. I'm conflicted in this thing because I mean, there's pluses and minuses for both teams. Okay. Georgia is still Georgia. I mean, I still have that down in my sitting down there at Hard Rock Stadium, and seeing freakish size and speed on defense. Although they lost a lot of those guys in the NFL, I don't think Georgia's quite the team this year that they were last year. They're a hell of a team. And I saw them play. I watched them play Tennessee and beat down some other teams, and then that looked so impressive against Georgia Tech for a while. I taped that game and checked them out in that game. But so I have that. I think that's doable. But Ohio State, I mean, it's tough to beat a team twice in the same year. I'm still stuck on that thing. And yet I think Georgia's better than Ohio State. So why wouldn't I want Ohio State? Um, I'd rather play Georgia, and I'm going to tell you why. Because for the Georgia game, it's a little bit of a payback for Michigan, okay? And also, I mean, if Ohio State is really clicking, what I didn't want to play Ohio State, and although the weather was perfect in Columbus, I always said to myself, I would not want to play CJ Stroud and the Ohio State Buckeyes in an indoor controlled environment. I think that would
Mhm.
not be good. you know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And SoFi is controlled environment. It's got, it's open air, but it's got that, that multi-billion-dollar stadium. It's got that roof over there. So it's a controlled environment. It's gonna be dry in there and comfortable. And so to answer your question, after gibberish around here, I'm gonna go. I'd rather play Georgia because I think it would be a rematch of last year, a little payback there. Although one good thing about the Michigan Ohio State game, if you're a Big Ten kind of guy, if you're a Michigan Ohio State rivalry kind of guy, it would be, in my opinion, the most hyped college football game in the history of the game. And that goes beyond any Alabama Georgia game. And it even exceeds when I was 10 years old here in East Lansing, the build up for Michigan State Notre Dame, two undefeated teams, November 19th of 1966. I remember every week, that's all everybody talked about. Michigan State, Notre Dame, leading up to the game to decide who was the national champion. That was when that was decided before the bowl games back there for you younger people who don't know historian type stuff like I do. Okay. So, so I would think so that would be great in regards, but God forbid, I wouldn't want Michigan to lose to Ohio State. I'd rather play Georgia. Okay. I'll stick with that.
All right. Well, we agree on what the matchup we'd prefer to see, but for different reasons. Let
Okay.
me preface this because I had this thought when you were talking about SoFi and the retractable roof and all that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Michigan turns out a lot of engineers, right?
Yeah.
So if you get that matchup, and it was Ohio State, you send somebody up onto that roof, you jimmy the retractable roof, you keep it open, you have other guys with fans and freezers and making fake snow that comes
Oh, you're,
down on the
you're crazy.
Buckeyes. And
You're a
that's
crazy dude, man.
well, that would freak them out. You know
Yeah.
that they'd
Yes.
immediately start making excuses.
Right.
So
Right.
here's my thinking on this. You, I do not think that Georgia. I total respect, but
Yeah.
Georgia 2022 isn't Georgia
I
2021. I
agree.
just don't believe it.
I
Just
agree.
because so many first round draft choices. I mean, they repopulated the NFL with their roster last year, and I just don't think
But
they
Brock
have
Bowers is still there. I mean, that
understood.
cartoon
Oh,
like tight end, and he's got a sidekick is almost as good as him. I mean, those
there's
two dudes scare the heck out of me.
yeah, there's still a ton of talent. No argument there. I just don't think, they go to Missouri and they're down considerably. And they
Yeah,
they had a few games this year where you kind of looked at them and said, okay,
yeah.
they are not invincible.
But they can turn
And
it on though, John. They
I
have a
get it.
they have that accelerator, that they punch, and all of a sudden they're up to 4,500 RPM, and it's like, look out.
Yeah. If you were just looking at the matchup that I think Michigan could more easily win, I would think it would be Ohio State, but it's still not the matchup that I particularly want to
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
because I don't think Ohio State belongs in the last four teams alive.
Okay, so
And
you're selling that kick, yeah,
I, yeah, I get it. I
yeah.
get it. They other teams lost and laid down and got their tails kicked and everything else, but I mean they advanced after a 22-point loss in their own stadium. I don't know. I can't.
Listen, I don't like Ohio State, and I don't have this Big Ten allegiance crap that some people. Oh, it's great for the Big Ten, which I just stated. I threw that nugget out there, but do I personally want Ohio State? There's two teams I cannot stand: Michigan State and Ohio State. I want them to lose every freaking game. I don't care. I don't care. They're playing tiddlywinks. I don't like their fan bases. They're both at the same level. Michigan State has really disappointed me and their fan base or people around me in East Lansing for what's happened in the last week, 2 weeks, three, going back to the Michigan State game and all the stuff that I'm sure we might talk about. But I mean, it's so I want them to lose. So I want when on New Year's Eve, Michigan beats Texas or TCU, Texas Christian. Let's just say that's going to happen.
Mhm.
Keep my fingers crossed. I'll be cheering for the Georgia Bulldogs, and I'll be cheering vehemently for the with for the Georgia Bulldogs with my little New Year's Eve little cone hat on the top of my head. That's I'll be all about.
Very good. But I do agree with you. If it ended up being Michigan, Ohio State, oh my word, would it be
No,
a
well,
hyped, unbelievable build
right.
up to that game? So,
I would
all
have to
right.
be I would have to be medicated probably to get through that.
Well, here
Probably
you
not
go.
necessarily, but probably.
We're
I have to
coming
talk to
down.
my doctor about that.
We're coming down the home stretch, so we don't have a lot of time to talk about the Michigan State bowl game. And
Oh,
okay, we're done.
we don't have time.
Now,
It's fine.
moving on.
Yes, moving on.
Moving on. Cade McNamara is moving on. He is
Yes.
going to be an Iowa Hawkeye. And we've also got Eric All in the transfer portal. Big change for a couple of guys that were just immense contributors last year. I've got some mixed feelings here. How about you?
Well, the Eric All thing took me way off guard. I mean, I was excited when I heard he was coming back. And that, and this is, where, I mean, even though our media access gives a little bit closer visibility of what's going on in the program than fans do, but still, we really don't know what's going inside those walls, and and the dynamics and what people are thinking. But this portal thing is nuts. I mean, on Monday, 500 kids signed up for the portal. There's 2,000 kids in the transfer portal, John. It's crazy, and there's not going to be spots for them. What do those dudes do? And I don't know about. I'm still haven't really learned in full disclosure about this injury. That I mean, Eric All had back surgery. I mean, I to be honest with you, I'm even more shocked he's coming back. It sounded like when you have back surgery, that's dicey just in everyday life.
Yeah.
And but I wish him the best. He was a terrific player for Michigan. If he goes to Iowa, I mean, is that everybody's just thinking that? Is that what's going to be, or not? I mean, is he going to Iowa, John, Eric?
I would not be at all surprised to
Okay.
see that be where he ends up. And I'll just add this. I mean, advice to young men. You can make changes, you can make moves. You will regret it less, and you will come off looking much better if you just move on, say your thanks, be regarded as someone who greatly contributed to Michigan, and try to limit or avoid altogether the parting shots out the door or even
Yeah,
hinting at
that
things.
disappointed me and surprised me more than anything. And I mean, and it was a subtle thing, but it was still there.
Hmm. Yeah,
It was
you
still
planted
there. And
seeds.
the grad transfer. I mean, Cade McNamara got his degree from the University of Michigan, and as an alumnus, he's gonna. I mean, hey, welcome to the alumni corps, people. That's a great thing to put up on the wall. But I think he saw the fact that he's not going to be playing quarterback at Michigan, and Iowa's a good figure. It's the trade, from what Jake Rudock, the trade from 15 or whatever that was.
Player to be named later.
Player, maybe players to be named later. Okay, so I understand that, but the Eric All thing a little bit surprised me, and then just other player, we got a couple sophomores here. I mean, Alabama's got 6 or 7 guys that are going in the portal. It's the grass is always greener, and there's a lot of influencer beyond even the parents. They're getting in kids' ears, and also the NIL element. There's a lot of moving parts, but I mean, I remember when it hit 1,500 in the portal last year. I remember that was a huge takeaway. But 2,000, and I can't process that when you have coaching staffs where you have staff positions that all they're doing is looking at the portal. I mean, that's crazy that we got to that point. And so that's why you have to almost reinvent yourself every year because you don't know how many kids you're going to have coming back.
Yes, sir. Hello, Mel Tucker.
Yeah.
Couple
Yes,
last
yeah.
things. Did Blake Corum, and in my opinion, it's a resounding yes, did he belong in the Heisman finalist field? I think he did,
Oh, hell yeah.
despite the injury. Yes, he would have had a fantastically big stage down at Ohio State. I think he should have been there anyway, as opposed to taking all quarterbacks.
He was one game short of a full season. I mean, and he even attempted to play in that game and showed a lot of fortitude and effort to do that. And Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, it was thrilling to have Aiden Hutchinson there last year, and I loved it when Desmond and Charles Woodson were Heisman Trophy. But I'm not one of these award kind of guys. I mean, I am so focused on the team from the Bo speech many years ago that I don't get twisted up in it that much. Although if there's any, but you're right. If there's anybody deserving of a Heisman Trophy, appearance in New York and all the accolades that go with that, and getting interviewed by her Kirk Herbstreit, doing all that stuff of an admiration that people have for him. He deserved it. So I'm disappointed. Maybe he might come back next year. Who knows? Uh, Maybe he'll win the whole thing.
Yep.
We can hope for that.
And here's the beauty of it. You say you're not all that into the individual awards. The other guy that isn't is Blake Corum.
Exactly.
He just
Exactly.
wanted to win this year, and he
Yep.
made that very clear. So
Yep.
before we go, we got to talk a little bit of Michigan basketball
Okay.
because there's a combination going on here of, oh boy, they're 5-3. They're losing close games. And this is not going to turn out well. But at the same time, a couple of these recent losses, Virginia and then
Yeah.
Kentucky over in London, I think that were almost more encouraging than some of the wins that they've had, just because quality opponent. You did some things right. You hung in there. I will say this: the injury to Jalen Llewellyn has a lot of people very worried.
Mhm.
But I think that it's too early to write this team off.
Oh, I'm not writing this team out. When you look back last year, of all the, I mean, they lost to Seton Hall. They lost, they got drilled by Minnesota in the Big Ten opener. They got drilled by Iowa late in the season. I mean, they were a bubble team. They had, 13 losses going into, I think it was 13 or 14 losses going in. They were a bubble team. They lost in the first game of the Big Ten tournament. And then they go down to Indy and they earned a fifth straight Sweet 16 wins over Colorado State and Tennessee, a number 2 seed. So hey, I'm not worried about this team, and I'm not into moral victories either, John. And I think you framed that accurately. That there was some silver lining to those two games, and the UVA game was there for the taking. It was there. The 11-point lead at halftime. Let it slip away. The last possession was a little, frustrating. The timeout usage and things like that. But then, so okay, got past that. So they go to London, which is crazy, and they play a good Kentucky team with oodles of talent. And Michigan was right there to win that game. I thought Hunter was terrific with 23 points. I thought Kobe Buffkin is he's starting to get me excited. But the Jalen Llewellyn, I really felt bad for that kid, but he's been struggling. Maybe this will be an opportunity for Doug McDaniel to step in there and be that point guard. The grad transfer thing. I think I've shared with you, John, that I know it. You had Mike Smith, Devontae Jones, and now Llewellyn, and I yearn for the other formula, the Derek Walton, Xavier Simpson 4-year guy, and we would have had that Frankie Collins, but he took off. So I think you need a veteran point guard, and I hope that Juwan addresses that in future recruiting. But maybe give ride the Rapids with McDaniel, and maybe even run Kobe in there at the point with Jet at the 2, and bring Joey Baker to fire some balls at the 3. I don't know, but they're going to have to figure it out. And they got to win some basketball game. 2 critical games, John, for me. That Minnesota game on the road,
Yes, sir.
Thursday night, huge, because that's a winnable road game, even though Barnes is a tough place to play. Then the other Big Ten start, the second Big Ten game, Maryland at home. Maryland very good, but it's at home. It's at home on January 1. Okay, got to
Yep.
win that game. Got to win. You got to win these first 2 games. They win these first 2 Big Ten games. Everything's cool.
Well, that would put them ahead of some Big Ten teams that didn't win
Yeah,
their
I
first
noticed that.
game. So I'm just gonna 3 guys that really need to grow up a lot between now and late February.
Okay.
Doug McDaniel, as you
Yep.
mentioned, Kobe Buffkin, and
Yep.
Jet Howard,
Yes.
all with plenty of talent,
Yep.
but all with things. I mean, Jet Howard was with some of the fouls that put him on the bench.
Yes.
away from the
Unfortunately.
play, away from, you just,
Good
that
point.
can't happen. And he's going to learn so much at this level, and as will the other two. You see those guys grow as the season goes along. I think this team could get much better. Tom Crawford, it's always fun. It always goes
45
fast.
minutes just
I
flies by,
I
man. Just like with
appreciate it.
Randy last week. This is
Yes,
crazy.
sir.
We need more time.
Yes, I will say this. We won't announce who it is right now, but we've got another very special
Oh,
guest
we got
coming
some good.
in the not
Yeah,
too near future, and we'll have
yeah.
a bunch through
We
basketball
got some
season and
great
beyond.
guys lined up for both football and basketball, JB. I'm super excited being on the podcast with you moving forward. The golden years of the golden era of Michigan football and basketball, as you alluded to.
There you go. Join us again next week at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you then.
Thanks, John.